I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Throws up with the head. Intercepted. At the 40. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25, 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, Bucs fans, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast, live on YouTube today for our Week 2 edition of the game preview. Joining us on the show today, a returning guest to the Cannon Fire Podcast, NFL veteran and host of the Bleav in Lions podcast, Quin, is back with us here today to break down some of the top storylines ahead of this Week 2 matchup. And Glover, we'll keep it short and sweet here. The Bucs certainly have a lot on their plate when you look at how they stack up against this Lions team. And, you know, this Bucs team has exceeded expectations for a lot of us here in the fan base before. They were able to do it in 2023. Their season ends in the divisional round, one game away from the NFC Championship against a really good Detroit team. Detroit also feels like they have something to prove this year. Both teams feel like they've gotten better. But it's certainly going to be a tall task for the Bucs this week. Your thoughts on both teams headed into this matchup and the Lions, the shape they're in this year?
I think it's going to be a good, early season matchup. Like you said, it's two, rematch of the playoffs last year. These guys met in the divisional round last year. Good game, and both teams are off to a 1-0 start this year. Got the same quarterbacks returning, some of the same guys in key positions. So you got some good turnover offensively and defensively, even though you lost some guys here or there. So I think it's going to be a good early season matchup. I think, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, the challenge that they present, for the Lions defensively with young secondary. That'll be a challenge. Terry Arnold played well last week, had a couple penalties, but I'm sure with him being the first rounder, he's gonna get challenged a lot week in and week out. And I wouldn't expect that to be any difference this week, especially going up with the two wide receivers that they have. The Lions offensively didn't look great last week, but they did enough to stay in the game, and they came away with a big drive in overtime and got to the victory. And that's really what they try to hang their hat on. They are a run the ball first team, and if they can stick with that and run the ball first, that opens up their play action game. That opens up so many more things that they like to do. And we saw it last week. Jameson Williams is a guy that can take the top off the defense. So once you marry that with the run game, and what David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs can bring to the table, along with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta controlling the intermediate, and now you add that extra layer with Jameson Williams over the top. They got some power on offense. They just got to click better than they clicked last week. So I expect it to be a pretty good game offensively and defensively. The Lions defense played pretty well last week, kept the game within striking distance for those guys, and they were able to come back and get the victory. So I think it's going to be a good game, a good early season task. But I think both teams are going to have to play a little better on both sides of the ball than they played last week.
You mentioned that young secondary up there in Detroit, and one of the things they did over the offseason to address that was bring in former Bucs cornerback Carlton Davis. Now, he was able to almost make a play in week 1, kind of popped up here and there against the Rams, but there's a report floating out that he had a really good week in the film room, and there was a lot of valuable information that he was able to give his guys about these Buccaneers wide receivers and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. He practiced against them for so many years down here in Tampa. First, your thoughts on Carlton Davis as a player and what he brings to that Detroit secondary. And second, does that stuff matter? Like, does Carlton Davis really have valuable info on how to potentially slow down Mike Evans or Chris Godwin? And is that kind of stuff, is that a big deal, or is that just kind of news chatter to get some guys excited?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of everything. And to be honest with you, I think it's definitely valuable. Um, and I think Carlton Davis has been, he's been around for a long time as a veteran guy. And so I think his leadership and what he brings to that secondary is is good. It's key. When you can provide some stability and a guy that has experience, a guy that's played in this league, a guy that's made plays, that's only going to help you with your secondary. As far as the information that, he could bring and provide, I would say that is a legit thing. But I mean, that happens all the time. It's not something that Carlton Davis just did and nobody else does. Everybody does it, right? Everybody knows it, especially if you're somebody that's spent a lot of time. I mean, it'd be like, you know, the Lions, instead of getting Carlton Davis, they got Mike Evans. And he's not talking about some of their offensive philosophies and things that they try to do to the defensive coaches. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. It's just now he is a corner that face these wide receivers day in and day out. So it could be more so just talking about the wide receivers as opposed to what they try to do offensively, because we can watch the film and all that stuff and figure that stuff out. But just far as like, hey, Chris don't like this. When we used to do Chris like this in practice, this will bother Chris. Or Mike, you know what? Mike's like this right here. This is what he's gonna do. This is what he's thinking. Yada yada yada. You can get that type of information. Now, you still got to go out and play the game, right? You still got to go out and play the game, because the thing about these players, they know who they are. Their coaches know who they are. So if Mike knows what gets under his skin, what doesn't get under his skin, he know what his skill set is, and he know what it is, and he know what he like to do and what he don't like to do. So you still got to go out and play the game. But every little bit of information that you can have that may could help you in any situation that you get in is valuable. Now, whether you get an opportunity to use it, whether it actually comes into play, and it may just come into play as you're watching film and get you better mentally prepared to go out for what you're about to handle. So I think any kind of information is valuable. And so I mean, I think that was good of him to be able to do that. But like I said, that stuff happens all the time. It's not just a Carlton Davis thing.
And the other thing I think, the important point is Carlton Davis knows Mike Evans, Chris Godwin well. Vice versa, though. They
They know
also know
him.
Carlton Davis very well. They know his tendencies, what routes he can struggle with, what he struggles at doing, what he's good at doing. So, I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think that matchup, whoever Carlton Davis ends up matching up with, might be Mike Evans. Carlton Davis is a big body, very physical corner. I would think, maybe that might be a guy that they target, put on Mike Evans there. So that's going to be a curious matchup to see for sure on Sunday.
No question. And what's even better, outside of the receivers, the coaching staff knows Carlton Davis. Those are the guys calling the plays. Those are the guys that are attacking you. Yeah, I can know your tendencies as a player, but the coaches probably know it a little more because they probably studied it a little more. They watched you. They signed you. They whatever, they have a little more insight into who you are and what they think of you and what they feel like you struggle with, what they feel like you play really well. So, like you said, it's going to be very interesting to see how they try to attack the Lions, how the Lions try to attack them, um, and should be a good task. Like I said, it's good early season game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a Bucs fan as well, we talked about this with the Rocked On guys last night, but I like that they are playing this Lions team early in the season. One, just because it's still in the early weeks of the NFL season, team still trying to find that cohesiveness week in and week out, getting into the rhythm of playing every single week. But, on top of that, I think you can take advantage of, some of those young guys still trying to find their place in the secondary, some of the rookies trying to find their place in the system. Now, let me ask you this. When you do look at this Lions team coming into 2024, the last time these two teams played, it was in the postseason. It was the end of the year. Guys were hurt. By that point, you had a really good idea of what these two teams had looked like based off of their regular season. But it's early in the year. How do you think this Lions team has improved since the last time these two teams played? You look at free agency, you look at the draft, any particular moves that you can point to and say, yeah, this team definitely got a lot better in this area here?
I mean, I would say, um, I think the cornerback position got better. I think, getting Carlton Davis was an upgrade from a Cam Sutton last year, and I think drafting Terry Arnold was a big pickup. So I think from a secondary standpoint, they got better at the corner position. I think the linebackers are, just another year experienced. Um, Big game experience. I think that probably has a lot more impact than, other things. I think the D line is pretty much um, the same. Picked up Davenport. He's going to help out, take pressure off of Aiden Hutchinson. I think the O-line, I think Jamison Williams being able to have a complete offseason without having to deal with injury, without having to deal with gambling, suspensions, and things like that, where he can actually work out, get better, come into training camp with a clear mind, and perform and get better. And him having the game that he had on Sunday doesn't mean he's going to have that game every time, but at least it has his confidence so high. And a lot of times that's what matters the most is confidence. Him feeling like he can make those plays as opposed to having drops in those situations. He feel like, he can be that big playmaker. And I think it sets up perfectly for him with the way they can run the ball and control the game at the second level with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. And so that's the thing. I don't think they made any one move that, make a break outside of, like I say, maybe the secondary, getting, Carlton Davis and getting and drafting Terry Arnold. Outside of that, I think it's just the guys getting a year older in the system, a year more experience, having a complete off season. I don't think anybody that I can think of had to have real big major off-season surgeries where they were not able to participate for the most part. So these guys have been practicing during OTAs, practicing during the summer, training camp. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that has helped this Lions team.
And they're gonna have to keep an eye, the Bucs that is on Jameson Williams. On Sunday had a big game against the Rams. Had a pretty nice game against Tampa last year in Week 6 when the Lions came to Tampa. I remember had a pretty big touchdown. And yeah, just like you said, he's in a bigger role now, especially with Josh Reynolds no longer there. He departed in free agency. That was probably the biggest loss that the Lions had per se as far as personnel goes. So I think Jameson Williams is gonna have a bigger role. You're right. With St. Brown and Laporta sort of with those intermediate areas. James Williams is kind of that home run hitter, right? He's that guy that could take the top off the defense and keep him honest. And with a depleted Buccaneers secondary right now, it wouldn't shock me to see the Lions go to that well a couple of times during this game because it could very well make or break this game.
Yeah,
No question.
Talking a little more about some of these mismatches here for Tampa Bay. You had mentioned that depleted secondary. 4 players confirmed today by head coach Todd Bowles to not be playing in Week 2's game against Detroit. That is safety Antoine Winfield Jr., arguably your best defensive player. Defensive lineman Kalijah Cansey will also be out, so going to be relying a lot more on whatever defensive lineman you have available. And, we'll talk about the defensive matchups in a little bit, but, putting more pressure on the blitz to kind of get home where your pass rush cannot. And Jared Goff and the Lions are already a team that is so good against the blitz. So, Todd Bowles obviously going to have to do some adjusting this week. Now, I wanted to talk some more about this in particular. Right tackle Luke Goedeke going to be confirmed out for this game. He popped up on the injury report with concussion-like symptoms this week at practice, which is never great. But, this is a Buccaneers offensive line that we're putting a lot of faith on the young guys here in this interior to improve and continue to play well. And now you're going to be missing a solid piece in Luke Goedeke at right tackle. So, Evan, as we kind of talk about some of the guys who are and are not available for the Bucs this week, how does the absence of Luke Goedeke affect what they're going to be trying to do on offense here? Because I think there's a lot of ways you can approach this Lions defense, and not having Luke Goedeke is going to kind of tie your hand behind your back in a sense.
It's a big challenge, and a guy like Justin School is going to have to come in and step up, and play that right tackle spot. I think you're going to be running mostly to the left side now, on Tristan Wirfs' side. The tough thing is the Lions are a really tough run defense. It's not easy to run against the Lions defense. So I think you're going to have to find ways to get the ball into your playmakers' hands quickly because you may not have all day, right? Aiden Hudson, really good player. Marcus Davenport, really good player. So those guys can, really wreck this game for the Bucs if they're not careful. Baker Mayfield avoided a lot of sacks, a lot of pressure last week. He may have to do the same if the Bucs want a chance in this one, right? If they want to move the football, I think staying ahead, staying on schedule, staying ahead of the downs, I think is very important in this game. And you get yourself into second and long, third and long situations, and I think it could spell trouble because that's when turnovers happen. That's when not very good things happen, and your success rate just is not very high at that point. So, yeah, losing Gedeke is a big loss, especially this late in the week. You figured, okay, you're going to have him. He pops up on the injury report out of nowhere. Now all of a sudden he's out of the game. So it is a big loss for sure, and it's something where the Bucs are going to have to adjust on the fly a little bit here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked a little bit before about playing with confidence. The Bucs did have a pretty strong performance on the offensive side of the ball in week 1. I know they did play the Washington Commanders, but 37 points is definitely nothing to sneeze at. Baker Mayfield, no turnovers, 4 touchdowns on the day for him. He's going to have to do it again, to be honest. Glover, when I look at how the Bucs match up against this Lions defense, I don't have a lot of faith in the run game just because it hasn't really developed. Things have changed a little bit since the last time these two teams met. The Bucs drafted Bucky Irving out of Oregon, and he averaged 6.9 yards per carry in his week 1 debut. So he brings a different element to the run game that Rachaad White just doesn't really have that same style, right? Bucky Irving is a guy that maybe they can work him in over the course of the game, but he adds a new fold to the offense, but it's only been 1 week against, the worst defense in the NFL in 2023. So still have to wait and see how these guys develop, but I think Baker Mayfield's going to have to be a superstar for another week in a row, and I think the Bucs are going to have to score a lot of points this week if they want to, try and win this one.
I mean, I would agree. I think Baker Mayfield is going to have to go out and, play really big in this game. You're going on the road. It's going to be a tough environment in Detroit. And Detroit offense didn't play well last game. So I'm sure they're going to try to come out and get back to who they are, which would in turn hopefully allow them to play better. The way they finished up that game with the run game, I would think they're going to start that this week and then build off of that. So that's going to put a lot of pressure on Tampa. The run game, the Lions defense has been playing really well the last dating back to last season, especially against the run. They've been a top run defense. So, I mean, it's going to be difficult to just run the ball. And I think that's something that we saw last year in the playoff games. It was just kind of hard to keep the run game going and to make plays off of that. It's a lot of short passes here and there. And so I think the Lions defense looked really solid against the run last week against the Rams. And I think they'll look the same. And so if Tampa can't get that run game going, it's going to put more pressure on Baker to go out and earn, well, he's already got it, but earn that big contract.
Yeah, definitely. And look, it's, and the tough thing is you want to have a balance, right? I don't know if a recipe for success is having Baker Mayfield throw the ball 50 times, right? But at the same time, if the run game isn't there, you may only have that option. And look, I mean, this is a Tampa offense. Yeah, they're trying to develop the run game. But their strength is the passing game, right? They got Mike Evans, they got Chris Godwin. That is their strength on offense, right? So I don't know if they're going to be relying on the run because, quite frankly, they might not be able to. And just like you said with the Lions offense, if the Lions offense comes out on fire here, who knows what's going to happen? Bucs go down 10-0 early. All of a sudden, you can't run the football as much as you maybe want to. So I do think it's going to be interesting to see how they come out of the gate, specifically if the Buccaneers get the ball first. Before the Lions even touch the ball, how does the Buccaneers game plan work out? How much are they actually going to try and run the ball? The Lions were fooled a couple of times last week by a lot of the Rams' motion. Obviously, Liam Cohen worked with Sean McVay with the Rams Rams a couple years ago. I'm curious to see how much they work that in to the playbook this week. But yeah, it is going to be a challenge to run the ball. So look, the ball is going to be in Baker Mayfield's hands for the most part in this game, I think.
Glover, when you look at this Lions team, I know it's still early in the season, but talking about this young secondary, some other spots on the defense, do you see any holes that the Bucs could potentially take advantage of this week? Is there anything that they're going to have to prioritize over the next thing to really effectively move the ball? Because Matt Stafford was able to connect with Cooper Kupp later on in that game. I know Puka leaves with injury and things happen the way that they do, but seemed like for a little while they did a decent job of moving the football. I think if Baker can find some time in the pocket, or I guess get rid of the football quickly, because he may not have that much time with a backup right tackle, they're going to try and move the football. But is there anything in particular you can think of being a weakness for Detroit?
Judging off the first game, I would probably just have to say, like I said, the first rounder is going to get his shots, right? They're gonna test and see, if you can play. And you're a younger guy, and you're going against veteran wide receivers, so you're going to get tested there. You haven't got to a situation where you're getting favorable calls from a referee as well. So, when they come at you, now they got potential for pass interference calls, and they got potential for them obviously just making a catch. And then I'm trying to remember. I can't remember. I'm having a brain fart on who the Lions nickel corner is on the inside. But I think those are going to be some of the areas that they try to attack, the nickel and Terrion Arnold, because I think the safeties are pretty solid. Kirby Joseph has been, making big plays and catching interceptions. The D-line is pretty solid. The linebackers, Alex Anzalone, Derek Brooks, those guys. Derek Barnes, I'm sorry. Those guys have been playing really well. So I don't see those as a weakness. I think they're really strong defensively. And I think it's really going to have to come down to, can Terrion Arnold hold up like he's been doing? And whoever they have playing the nickel, can he hold up? Because I know, and I didn't watch Tampa as much last week, so I don't know if they're still using Chris Godwin a lot in the slot. But I know he used to make a lot of money in the slot, and Mike Evans on the outside. So him being healthy, playing in the slot, the nickel corner is going to be a huge, huge, huge task. And then when Mike Evans go for the deep ball, he's been one of the best deep ball threats in the NFL, not from just a speed standpoint, running past guys, but just a big body and being fast enough that when they put it up in the air, he has great body control, great ball skills to some kind of way come down with that ball.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, to be honest, I think that is a new fold in the Buccaneers offense this time these two teams play. One, Chris Godwin taking a more prominent role back in the slot position where he had made a lot of money before. And then the presence of Jalen McMillan as wide receiver 3 this year. He had a really big preseason, and I know he's a rookie wide receiver coming out of Washington. The Bucs are really high on him. Had a big-time touchdown in week 1. His only catch of the day was a 30-plus yard touchdown. Now, Baker missed him earlier in the game. And this is where, I think the Bucs are really going to have to come out firing here in week 2. You cannot afford those kind of mistakes and drop touchdowns against a team like the Lions because they will certainly make you pay. But I think the dimension of Jalen McMillan and obviously Chris Godwin, Liam Cohen, I think is going to have a really good time with Chris Godwin this year. It's a contract season for him. And then on top of that, last week he was the Buccaneers' highest graded offensive player. He was the leading receiver for Tampa Bay. I Bleav he was the highest graded PFF receiver in the NFL for week 1. So he was very effective. He was efficient, and he was Mr. Third Down a lot of the times as well. So I think that is a new dynamic that the Lions may not be as ready for. So if the Bucs can take advantage early and not make any crucial mistakes here, I think they can come out firing and really make this a game. But Evan, before we kind of talk a little bit more about this matchup here, your thoughts on this Buccaneers offense?
Godwin is the one to watch, I think, because I think a lot of the attention is going to go to Mike Evans, and rightfully so. They may even have some brackets, Mike Evans' way, trying to take him out of the game. And I think Chris Godwin, especially being back in the slot, I talked earlier about the motion, right? The use of motion. A lot of times that's Chris Godwin, who's in that motion role. So Godwin is definitely one to watch. McMillan as well, because I think in order to win this game, I think they're going to need somebody other than Mike Evans or Chris Godwin to step up in the receiving game, whether that's Rashad White again out of the backfield, who had a quiet day running the football, but had 75 yards catching the ball. So whether that's Rashad White, whether it's Jalen McMillan or Trey Palmer, whoever that may be, I think they're going to need somebody else to step up besides those two in order to win this game. Because I mean, it's a tough defense. I mean, we're talking about a game, unfortunately, where you're like, oh, the Bucs got to score a lot of points. Well, it's not the easiest defense to score a lot of points against, and the environment. Glover talked about it a few minutes ago. Home field advantage for the Lions is real, and that place is going to be bumping. On Sunday, so it's going to be a real challenge. And again, just like you said, Rhett, though. You can't afford the mistake like earlier, where the ball is just ahead of Jalen McMillan, he drops it. You can't afford those things. You got to be on your P's and Q's in this one, and hopefully Tampa Bay is.
Yeah, going to have to take care of the football. I think for Baker Mayfield,
that I think might be.
Quick passes, taking care of the football, high percentage looks. I think Liam Cohen drawing up an effective, efficient game plan this week. They know what they have to do. They know what they are going into this game without. That is starting right tackle Luke Gedeke. You talk about guys like Aiden Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport. The Bucs are very familiar with him. He has done some damage in a Saints uniform before, so we have seen him down here before. But I think the Bucs they're going to be as ready as they can. And to be honest with you, I know they are going into this. It is a very tall task, but I think there's a less than 0% chance the Bucs could surprise a lot of people this weekend. Maybe that's just the fan in me talking, but I definitely think that if they are prepared, if they start quickly, they could make this a game down the stretch here. But Glover, when you look at this Lions offense, Jared Goff is a quarterback who has a lot of success against Todd Bowles whenever these two teams play. Evan, we talked a lot on the game preview with Rocked On. The first time Todd Bowles met Jared Goff, he was with the Rams. That was 2019. And the Bucs,
Todd Bowles did win.
Todd Bowles did win. The Bucs put up 55 points, and Jared Goff still threw for 500-plus yards in a loss for the LA Rams. Now, again, the two times the Bucs played the Lions in 2023, the Lions move the ball at will. So, Glover, again, you kind of look at the strengths and the weaknesses, where you think this offense may have gotten better. Where do you think they can take advantage of the Bucs this week, and what do you think they're going to prioritize here to keep the football moving?
I mean, I think when you look at a team like the Lions, I think they want to operate as a good team, and good teams operate how they want to operate. Good teams say, you're going to have to stop us from doing what we do. And I think the Lions are going to do that. I don't think they came out in the first game and really established a run game based on their identity and what they've been about grit, the O-line, Penei Sewell, the running game, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. I don't think they came out in week one and made a point to do that. And I think they saw how the game was going. Their offense wasn't clicking because Amon-Ra St. Brown lives off of the play action game. Sam Laporta, those guys live off of that. And when those guys get going, it opens up the run game even more. And then, like I said, when you add Jamison Williams' ability to have a big play touchdown, it just gives them so much more firepower, but they have to establish the run game. And so I think they're going to come out this game and really, really, really try to get that established, because I think defensively they feel like they can hold up long enough to get it going. I don't think they feel like they got to come out and try to hurry in and run away with the game. I think it's early in the season. They want to come out and establish the run game, because they saw in overtime how effective they can be and how they can run the ball if they really just lock in and do it. And if they can come out and run the ball like that, that's going to open up everything for everybody else and it's going to make it really, really, really difficult to stop those guys. So I don't know if they're going to go in the game really focusing on, okay, well, Antoine Winfield Jr. is not playing, so they're missing one of their best defenders. The secondary guy has come out and tried to throw the ball for 500 yards. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to say, hey, we're the Lions. We are at home. We're going to come out and we're going to dominate the line of scrimmage, both offensively and defensively, and make them stop us.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and it's just that identity of that football team, and that's what got them where they went last year, went to the NFC title game. So, and they want to get back to that, and I think the Bucs are going to have to find a way, to stop the run and sort of keep the Lions one dimensional. At the same time, though, it's tough to do that when your secondary is as depleted as they are, right? When and Jared Goff, a guy who has had a lot of success against Todd Bowles' defenses, so. That one win that Todd Bowles had, against Jared Goff, or Goff threw for over 500 yards, that was Todd Bowles' only win against Jared Goff in his career. So looking to I Bleav it's 3 in a row that Jared Goff has beaten Todd Bowles. So looking to end that streak here, but it's not gonna be an easy task, because even if you slow down the Lions run game, which is it's what they're good at, that's an accomplishment. But they got some weapons on the outside too. We talked about earlier, with Williams and St. Brown and Laporta. So, and I mean, even Gibbs, in the passing game, a guy like Gibbs can really hurt you. So, there's multiple ways that they can go about this, and hopefully the Buccaneers are ready for those.
Yeah, and obviously going to be a little bit of a magnifying glass on the Buccaneers pass rush this week. Todd Bowles, as a coach, we've said it before, we'll say it again, I'm sure, he lives and he dies by the blitz. Last week, I Bleav he blitzed Washington something like 42% of the defensive snaps. He's always been one of the most blitz-heavy defensive coaches in the NFL, whether he's a D coordinator or a head coach. But I'm personally curious about what that game plan is going to look like this week. And we touched on this a little bit last night, Evan. Wanted to get your 2 cents about this Buccaneers defense and how they're going to try and slow down Jared Goff. Because I know, Glover, you said that they're going to try and run the football. And I think that's going to be a tough test in itself for this Buccaneers run defense, just because, Jaden Daniels, I know he's playing from the quarterback position, but he ran all over him last week. I think if they are unable to set the edge, or at least try and get off of the field on 3rd down here against the run game, it could be a long afternoon. But if Todd Bowles is blitz heavy in the first half of this game, I don't think there's very much stopping Jared Goff from throwing for 250, 275, maybe 300 plus yards, just because, one, the Bucs are already down Antoine Winfield Jr. 2, I don't feel comfortable enough with this pass rush yet, applying significant pressure to Jared Goff to throw him off of his game. So the pressure is going to have to come from somewhere. You don't have Devin White anymore, who, Evan, you said it before, was the fastest linebacker on the field for the Bucs. KJ Britt doesn't entirely look comfortable in that blitzing linebacker role. We know Levante David can do it, but he's kind of a do-it-all linebacker for the Bucs right now. So he's going to have his hands full with a Sam Laporta assignment or whatever else it may be. So, Evan, I say all of that to ask you this. How do you think Todd Bowles is looking at approaching this Lions offense this week? Because, again, if we go off of what they've done in the past, I don't think blitzing 50% of the game is going to get the job done.
Yeah, again, though, I mean, I think I mentioned it on the show last night that we did. You can check that out on the YouTube channel right now. But I think this is the same guy that blitzed, Matthew Stafford in the Rams with 30 seconds left in the divisional round of the 2022 playoffs. So it's not like Todd Bowles is going to change. I don't expect Todd Bowles to change. Now, will he change a little bit? Maybe. And I think the depleted secondary sort of may force his hand, because what you're doing when you blitz, if you don't get there, your secondary is on an island. And they're against some talented, wide receivers here. And I'm not sure if that's the best way, because clearly the Lions and Jared Goff have some way to negate that blitz, essentially. The blitz doesn't really work against Jared Goff and the Lions. So, yeah, I would say it would be smart to switch some things up, maybe, make Jared Goff beat you with his arm. it's easier said than done. But the first key is stopping the run, right? You have to stop the run, force the Lions to throw the ball, force them into 3rd and long situations, 3rd and 6+, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 10s. That's what you have to force them into, obvious passing downs. And then I think, you just got to play coverage. I mean, and hope you can generate some type of pressure with 4 guys. The tough thing about it is, the Lions' offensive line is pretty darn good as well. So it's not like, they're a bunch of schmucks out there. They're really good football players. And the Bucs pass rush is going to have to play, specifically the 4-man pass rush, I think is going to be a key in this one. And I think that's a reason why Todd Bowles hasn't been able to beat Jared Goff. They haven't generated enough pressure with just 4 guys. They've had the blitz to get that pressure, and then ultimately Jared Goff, picks them apart.
It is going to be a tall task for this Buccaneers pass rush this week. Before we dive into our game picks, Glover, wanted to get your final take on this game. We talked about the Buccaneers offense and how they're going to have to definitely come up with some creative play calling to effectively move the football. I think if they come out early firing and confident, they can definitely make this a game here. I don't love the run game. And then, we talked about the holes on the defensive side of the ball for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Maybe Todd Bowles makes a little more adjustments this week, a little more disguising of the blitz and coverages, trying to throw off Jared Goff, who is one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. So that's going to be tough to do as well. Your thoughts on this matchup and ultimately, how do you see this one shaking out?
Well, like I said, I think it's going to be a good early season matchup. I think both teams are coming off of good wins opening day. I think both teams are fairly healthy for the most part early in the season. So I think you're going to see both teams play fairly well. I think the Lions have a little more firepower offensively. And I think, like I said, if they can establish the run game, I think it's going to make their offense even more explosive with the wide receivers. And, Jameson Williams, the thing about him is the fact that he's playing with that confidence and people understand how fast he is and how he can take the top off. It just puts a little fear right there that you just have to respect it because you don't want that one play 80-yard touchdown. That's not what they don't mind. Amon-Ra St. Brown having 10 catches for 90 yards because everything is underneath.
Right.
You don't want Jameson Williams to have 5 catches for 130 yards, right? Those are big plays being generated down the field. And so they're going to have to really, 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 really stop that, especially with Antoine Winfield Jr. being out the game. And so I think it's going to be a good game. I think the Lions are going to come out fired up. And I think Tampa, I don't want to discredit Tampa. My brother-in-law is a huge Tampa Bay fan. He talks a lot of smack. But I just think the Lions are going to have too much for Tampa this year, this week. And I think the fact that they met last year in the playoffs, I think, they're going to come back out. Tampa's going to come out fired up. But I think the Lions are going to just have too much. And it's going to be another home game. And the fans are going to be fired up. Ford Field's going to be rocking. And I think the Lions will win this one by, I don't even want to say, but I think the Lions will win this one.
Yeah, so the spread for this game is it's 7.5. The Lions are favored at home. 7.5. It opened up at 6.5. Now it is at 7.5. With the Buccaneers injuries, I would not be surprised if it moves even more between now and the start of the game. But you're saying the Lions cover here at 7.5, maybe?
Yeah, I was gonna give them a 10-point win, but yeah, I think they'll cover 7.5.
That's fair enough. I mean, listen, we talked about this on the season prediction show the week before the season started. This was going to be a tall task for Tampa anyways. We look at the Lions, and we've talked about it all up until this point. A lot of people would say they are one of the top-tier teams in the NFC. Without question, I think a top 3 team in the NFC. The Bucs know where they want to be. The Lions know where they want to be. And the Bucs, they still have a little bit of work to do to get to where the Lions are right now. So with that being said, expecting, I I hate to pull this term out of Bucs mediocrity straight out of 2018, but I'm expecting a bend but don't break defense this week. Like you said, Amon-Ra is going to get his. He's going to get yards. I think Jared Goff, I think the Lions are going to move the football effectively well. I just think it's going to be up to the Bucs to, turn a possession that ends in a touchdown into a possession that ends in a field goal. If the Lions can take 3 instead of 7 and the Bucs can score on the following drive, you never know how things are going to end up working out. So I think there's a chance, but the Bucs are being as beat up as they are. I just don't love their chances at all. I think Luke Gedeke was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back when you look at what they're going to be able to do on the offensive side of the ball. So I do have the Buccaneers losing this one. I don't think the Lions cover, though. 7.5 is a lot of points, man. So last night, my prediction was 6 points. Now I'm going to make it 7. I think the Lions win this game 35-28. And maybe 28 is a lot of points for the Bucs, but I think they come out early, and I think Baker is going to play confident until he throws that first pick of the season. And then he'll be a little more conservative. But he got that big contract. He played well week 1. I think he's going to be fired up off of the smellies here for week 2.
Yeah, I also have the Buccaneers losing this game, unfortunately. I Bleav by 7 points as well. I'm no mathematician, but I have I think the Lions, again, just like you said, are going to be able to move the football. I think the big key, again, you said, is bending but don't break. And I also think whoever wins this turnover battle, I think whoever wins the turnover battle, I think you're going to see is probably going to win this game. I do think it's going to be a fairly tight game throughout. But I do think the Lions end up beating the Buccaneers by a score of 33-26. So I think the Bucs are going to be able to score a little bit. I like their offense. I like what I saw out of Liam Cohen and the offense in week 1. I just don't think the Bucs have quite enough, especially with their injuries, and I don't think it falls in their favor this time around.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Unfortunately, all 3 of us here picking the Bucs to lose this week. I'm hoping for a competitive game. I think whenever these two teams match up, it's either, kind of one-sided, or at least in the postseason, it was pretty exciting down until the end. So, Glover, thank you so much for your time this week. We really appreciate you jumping on and breaking this game down with us. For the people who do not know where to find you and your content, where can they connect with you?
Oh man, you can connect with me on Instagram. I'm on Instagram at Glover Quin, and I'm on X or Twitter. I'm on there at Glover Quin Jr. So you can connect with me there. I'll be there. Hit me up.
Awesome. Can also catch you for a brand new season of coverage on the Bleav in Lions podcast. I Bleav with Brandon Brown. You guys are going to be rolling out for 2024. Yeah. So very exciting things going on there. Thank you once again, man. Really appreciate your time. Follow our show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show and, of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. You can follow my co-host, Evan, on Instagram at Bucs_Daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL. Check out his written work at BucsNation.com. Last but not least, you can find myself, Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off for my co-host, Evan Wanish, and our special guest, Glover Quin. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We'll talk to you Sunday after the game, live right here, youtube.com/Cannon Fire Podcast. We'll see you then. Until then, and as always, go Bucs.